Hello, today I'm going to paint an old red brick farmhouse. Let's get started. It's a good idea to start any painting of a landscape in particular by painting the sky area with plain water before you apply any paint. I'm going to apply cobalt blue as a sky colour. It's always a good choice, cobalt. And I'm going to paint diagonal stripes with little gaps in between. It's diagonal because apparently, according to psychologists, etc., they say that this creates a sense of energy and movement. And the little gaps, because it sort of creates clouds, wispy clouds, the sort you get in summer. It's sort of random stripes. They're not. I'm not sticking to candy stripes or that kind of thing. And when I reach the horizon, I'm going to rinse out my brush, dry it on a kitchen roll, and then bring everything together at the horizon to make it look a little bit lighter at the horizon. A good scrub with a damp brush is often the way I lighten the horizon line. Cadmium red with a tiny dash of sap green. You can use any green actually, but I use sap green because the sap green, or any green, neutralises the red a little bit. It takes the edge off a red's brilliance and creates a brick red. It's a fairly strong mix because, bricks are fairly strong and structurally they need to look like they're strong and so light wash wouldn't really be suitable, though you can get away with it for buildings in the distance. But this is the main feature of the painting, so it needs to look substantial. Adding a little bit of yellow ochre, just for a bit of variety within the brickwork. You can put anything in there. I sometimes use burnt sienna or ultramarine, Payne's grey. In fact, a patch of any dark colour can look quite effective. But today I'm just going to use a little dab of yellow ochre. Now mixing together ultramarine blue and burnt umber. Ultramarine blue and burnt umber is a classic mix for just about, for so many things. In this case, for the roof of the farmhouse. I'm painting in a simple wash. If you put in more blue than brown, it looks blue-ish. And if you put in more brown than blue, then of course it looks brownish. So you can easily adjust the tone over a wide range to suit whatever you need. Now yellow ochre, such a useful colour, and cobalt to create a green. To paint the fields towards the rear of the farmhouse. Starting at the top of the field with a grey-green to create a distance, yellow ochre and the cobalt, and then following up with a brighter green, which is cadmium yellow and cobalt. So as it comes forward, it looks brighter and of course closer. Wherever I can, I'm intending to paint all the white areas before I apply any second coats anywhere. It's once the entire paper is covered, it allows me to make better decisions on tonality and that sort of thing. I'm now painting with a neutral greyish green the hedge that grows across the front of the farmhouse. Decided on cobalt blue for the door. Could be any colour, of course, but decided on cobalt blue. Raw umber for the pathway, and thinning it out as it approaches the doorway by adding plain water. Burnt umber and French ultramarine blue, making a strong dark mix for the windows. Using a small brush now, a size 2, fine enough for me to make these little marks. Surprising how useful the smaller brushes are, you know, size 0, size 2, 4, 6. I use them all the time. What also works when I'm painting windows is not to use a dark paint, but to use a sky blue. It has a similar effect, but I decided to use the dark mix this time. And then dab it off in places to make some of the window frames reflect more light than others. Looks more realistic. And now cadmium yellow, ultramarine blue, to paint a large tree which stands at the side of the farmhouse. Using a number 6 pointed round brush. The paper, by the way, is £140, 300 gram Arche cold pressed. Now applying a similar colour to the edge that runs across the front of the painting. It's the second coat on the hedge. And using some of the dark mix to put in a shadow. Now, because the paint of the hedge is still wet, these dark marks will spread into the paint and lighten out considerably as they dry. But it will still give me a darker bottom of the edge. I'll reinforce the shadows there later. Now back to the tree with a dark mix on the right hand side, because I'm imagining that the sunlight is appearing from the left, top left in the painting. It's always a good idea to put a few tiny little squiggles and dots on the edge of trees. It always gives a sense of realism. One of my favourite often used techniques is to apply a very bright colour over a green area, particularly field. In this case, I'm using New Gouache, a very heavy coat, and then dab it off, which leaves behind a residue, and it can look very effective. It would be difficult to paint something like that. It's easier to put it on than wipe it off and leave a little bit behind. Now I'm using the palette knife, making marks on the tree to indicate the trunk and branches. Got to do that, of course, before the paint dries. Too early and it doesn't work at all. Too late and it doesn't work at all for a different reason. Now the hedgerow, a familiar feature of the English countryside. I'm using a size 2. Round brush, just a series of jiggles and squiggles. The smaller brushes are quite handy for painting in extra detail. Big brushes are good, but sometimes smaller brushes are better. Pretty simple to do. It's usually a good idea to include either a dry stone wall or hedgerows in any landscape. Now making a good strong mix of Payne's grey to paint the garden gate. I want it to stand out quite clearly. I've now reached the position where I can start to paint in all of the shadows. Burnt umber, ultramarine blue, and alizarin crimson. Classic shadow mix. Usually with a bias towards the blue in winter and a bias towards the brown in summer. Paint under the eaves now, preferably with one continuous movement. There's going to be a shadow cast by the house across the extension at the side of the house. It'll throw a shadow there. And not forgetting the little shadow cast by the chimney stack across the roof. And now going back in again to the hedge and applying more shadow. This time, because the paint is dry, it won't, of course, seep into the paper. It will stay put. It will stay where it is. It will lighten considerably, at least 30%, but it will remain there as shadow. Putting in a few other shadows here and there. Small descriptive marks are very interesting and they're detailed, but without drawing too much attention to themselves. A shadow on the left-hand side and top of the door, because as I said earlier, the light is coming from the top left-hand corner. A few marks for tiles, ridge tiles on the roof. And the chimney pots going in. a light shadow under the windowsills. And I missed one. The bottom window on the right hand side. It always helps, nearly always, to put a shadow in the foreground, coming into the picture. Draws the viewer's eye in towards the centre of the painting. We just need to imagine a tree or a building outside of our view and casting its shadow into the picture. The number 2 round, the tiny brush, popping in little dots, very tiny dots, to give the hedge texture. Not too much, just a little bit here and there. It will lighten as it dries, but it sort of gives a bit of realism to the finished result. Little blades of grass, of course. Not too many. Then I finally spotted the shadow that had missed. Now we come to the final section, really, which is going to paint in flowers in the garden. And for that, this time I'm using gouache paint. You could leave reserve white space using masking fluid and so on, but on this occasion I've elected to use gouache, because you can use gouache, you can paint with gouache over a previously painted area, a dark area, and it will cover because it's opaque. So I'll give a little demonstration of painting flowers in the garden using gouache. And there we are. The job done, as they say. Painting's finished. Just now a case to remove the tape. Always improves the painting when you see a frame round it. I'm quite pleased with that. That came out fine. Well, at this point, I'd just like to say thank you very much indeed for sticking with it, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you managed to pick up some information that's of use to you and your own paintings, and look forward to us getting together again sometime in the future. Please leave a thumbs up if you would, that would be very much appreciated, and subscribe if you've not already subscribed. So until the next time, bye for now.